Thus far, 2025 has flown by at an incredibly slow pace. I can't explain it, but it feels like these months have gone on forever, but I'm also like, how is it already the end of February? But since it is the end of February, it's time to stop and rank all 7 new releases that I saw this month from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your ranking of the February new movies that you saw. My list is not the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. As we go into this, I missed some big, obvious films that I should have seen, some movies I was excited to see and the reviews weren't so great, some movies that had fantastic reviews, I just couldn't get out to see them. I was out of town for a little bit, my wife was out of town, I was just constantly in catch-up mode. I haven't been able to get out to the theater quite as much, I missed multiple press screenings. It is what I have missed movies I probably should have seen. Let's get started. In last place, Little Bites. This is a film from Spider-One, actually Rob Zombie's brother and the lead singer of Power Man 5000. I actually saw this film at Fantastic Fest back in September, and it's a movie that just didn't really resonate with me. It's kind of a vampire story that's a bit of a metaphor for addiction, codependent relationships, toxic relationships, and it's just very slow in a film that I never fully understood the choices that the characters were making. And despite it touching on some themes about addiction and substance abuse, things like that I personally can resonate with and that have been very personal to me, it didn't do so in a way that connected with me. The metaphor never worked. The narrative never hooked me. The characters weren't compelling enough. And so it's just a film that I felt was just too stretched out, that didn't deliver enough, didn't say enough, and the metaphors and analogies and everything never fully communicated anything that I found compelling. Number 6, Captain America, Brave New World. Now, I don't think this movie is terrible. I just don't think it's particularly good. It's another one of these Marvel movies that just feels stuck in mediocrity, where just feels like they microwaved a script and tried to fix it in post. And when you do that, you don't end up with the best product. And there's quite a few things with this film that I think are just kind of fundamentally flawed. There's this inherent feeling of the whole movie's a bit like cinematic leftovers. Now, some leftovers are great. Some leftovers are not so great because some things reheat better than other things, and that's the case with this movie. There's things in here that I really enjoyed. There's things in here that reminded me of what I loved about Phase 3 of the MCU, and the cinematic universe feels like an actual shared universe once again, where the events of other movies matter in this film. But it's also a film that I think is just fundamentally flawed on a conceptual level, where they wanted to make a movie where Sam Wilson is the star, front and center, and they chose a story which is a sequel to The Incredible Hulk and Eternals, and I just don't think he's the right character for this story. The whole movie, you're thinking, why aren't they calling Bruce Banner? This is the obvious person, not just because he's a Hulk, but also because he's an expert on gamma radiation. Why aren't they calling him? It's a fundamental flaw with the concept of the film. And so much of this leads into a third act where you have Sam, a Captain America without the super soldier serum, battling a Hulk, where we've seen someone who is hopped up on super soldier serum fight a Hulk, and it had disastrous results. And so just like right here, just it's not the most compelling of final battles because Sam can never win this fight other than to de-escalate it. And you're not watching a fight where you believe that Red Hulk is going to start killing children and using a school bus filled with children as a baseball bat. So there's no stakes to it. We're just watching some fun carnage before we know eventually Red Hulk is going to be talked out of being crazy. But even there, I think they abandoned all the most obvious, dramatically interesting things that you could do by having his daughter show up in this specific field that they discussed her showing up and walking in with her dad. They abandoned the idea of like Isaiah Bradley, I think, could have shown up, picked up the shield. That would have been a very emotionally potent moment. They didn't do that. And so there's all these fundamental flaws because they picked the wrong protagonist for a story about Thunderbolt, the leader, and Red Hulk. It should have been Hulk or Hulk with Sam Wilson, but they didn't do that. And of course, it was reshot to death, and you feel that watching the movie, where especially the middle section of the film, you just feel the movie duct taped together with reshoots, Giancarlo Esposito popping up, scenes that are awkward, shot in close-ups, people clearly aren't in the same space together. So it has some great elements in it. There's things that I enjoyed about it. It's not awful. It's just not very good. Next up is Time Stalker. This is a quirky little British indie comedy that I saw at last year's South by Southwest, which would be right at a year ago because South by Southwest kicks off a week from tomorrow. But this was a fun little film, basically just this odd concept of this girl that kind of keeps reincarnating in these constant situations where she's chasing after this man that she's infatuated with, so she's stalking him throughout time. And it's sort of a story about, like flipping familiar patterns on their head, unrequited love, chasing your dreams but not your delusions. A bunch of kind of fun ideas. It can be ultra violent at times, very offbeat. If you're looking for something quirky and different, if you like British comedy, if you're kind of into romance but want something that's kind of sending it up with this very odd nature to it, consider looking for this film, trying to find it wherever it is available where you're at. Fourth, The Gorge. This is a new film from Scott Derrickson. I was actually lucky enough to be able to interview him about the film after watching it, as well as his whole career, so you can check out that interview somewhere around here. We got to talk for over 20 minutes. It was amazing, fantastic. And this is a movie I had a good time with. It's not great, but it is good. And it's the kind of movie that I want more of. One of the things that, from just seeing the trailer for The Gorge, that made me very excited is that it feels like we don't get enough movies like this out of Hollywood, where it's a spec script given a budget.
That was the other reason I said yes to it. Because, again, I said no at first because it was too unfamiliar, and then I was like, what am I doing? I'm a director, I'm an artist. That's the reason to do something. But it was the fact that here is a very expensive, tentpole level movie that Skydance and Apple were willing to pay for, that's not a sequel, it's not a franchise film, it's not IP, it's just an original story. And you're not trying to build a franchise out of it, it's just an original story. And I thought, we need more of these.
Exactly.
I need to make one.
It's blending together a bunch of different genres, where you go into it expecting this creature feature, maybe with a little bit of intrigue, mystery, paranoia, but actually the glue kind of holding it together is the romance.
The trick was, don't lose the romance. Yeah. The romance has to keep going through the other genres. It's the glue that ties them together. Yeah. And that's, right down to things like how they cover each other with their weapons, how they look at each other.
You used the word glue to describe it. That's literally the word that I used in one of my later questions. That was actually my favorite part of the film, which was kind of interesting. I wasn't expecting that going into the film, that's what I would really buy into, the chemistry between the two leads. And when you kind of got into the creature feature stuff, it was fine. It was fun. It didn't fully work for me. It was a little bit more conventional. But the thing that made me go this is a cool movie, I dug that, is because I dug the two leads in this offbeat romance in the most unlikely of contexts. So, like I said, as someone that likes these original concepts, that takes some risks, that are like, what if we try and blend together quite a few different genres? I like these types of movies. This one delivered, and unexpectedly, the thing it delivered was romance. When you're watching the movie, you get like 30, 40 minutes and you really buy into their relationship and you're like, that's really working. And then you remember the other genres of the movie. I was like, oh no, oh no, there's something bad's about to happen. And it's not just that in the story, but also means the genre's about to change. While I was watching it, I was like, why did they decide to release this movie at Valentine's Day? And then you get 5 minutes into the movie, 10 minutes into the movie, you go, there it is.
That's why.
That's right there.
And then 50 minutes later, you're like, oh, I really get it now.
Right. It keeps building. In third, my dead friend Zoe, and this is another one that I watched at South by Southwest a year ago. And that was kind of a fun experience because one of the lead actress of the movie was in the row right behind me with her husband. So it's always interesting when you're watching a movie, looking over your shoulder, watching the person on screen and they're right behind you, seeing their reaction to being in the audience in that kind of environment. But it's a little bit tough it's one that's a little bit tough to talk about and review because it's really easy to spoil some stuff in the film and what it's really about. The film is about this girl that basically has PTSD from her time in the military and her experience with her friend, as you can probably imagine from the title of the film, who is dead. And we're both tracking her in the present as well as kind of unpacking what happened in the past. And so you don't know exactly what the movie is about until you're pretty far into the film. And that's why it's a little bit difficult to dive in and discuss what does and doesn't work about the film without going into some of those spoilers. But it's a movie that has a really nice, dark sense of humor to it at times, since it can be funny. And a lot of that is coming from a character who is dead. And they're having fun with that a little bit. It can be poignant at times. It can be heartfelt. And it's a very personal story from the people that made the film. Really were trying to tap into like lived tragedy and experiences coming from the military. I think it can be maybe heavy-handed when you do get into realizing exactly kind of what's going on with the film and in the real backstory to everything. It can be a bit heavy-handed, and it I don't want to use the phrase manipulative because that's overstating a little bit, but I think it overplays its hand a little bit with the messaging. But it is a very effective film. It's a movie that gets you. It's thought-provoking. After the film, everyone was kind of talking about it outside about kind of like, okay, what do we make of that? Did they handle that right? Was it? That's what you want, a movie that gets you talking that also can be entertaining. Our runner-up, The Monkey. This is the latest film from Osgood Perkins. And last year he did one of my top 10 favorite movies, Longlegs. This year we get another horror film from him, but about as polar opposite of a horror film as you can get. Whereas Longlegs was this bleak, dead serious serial killer film that is, taking a lot of inspiration from Kubrick with the camera work and the sound design. And then this film is basically a send-up of horror films. It is based off a short story from Stephen King. It is produced by James Wan, but it is absolutely a horror comedy. And really, in a lot of ways, it's a comedy with gore that is playing around with the horror genre, but it has the tone of a comedy. And for me, it absolutely worked. Perhaps because I saw it a little bit late. I saw it after I'd read a lot of reactions of people like, oh, that was very different than I was expecting. It's like Final Destinations, except like as Looney Tunes. It's the super dark comedy. I went in expecting that. And I'd heard the first half is better than the back half. So I went in kind of expecting some point in time where there'd be this big shift where maybe it would lose me. And for me, that never really happened. I just had a good time with it. It's wild. It's wacky. It is comedy logic. It is tonally a comedy. That's what it is. But it made me laugh. Like I felt almost like I was at Crazy Pills because I was the one person laughed throughout the entire movie where something shocking would happen, someone would die, and it would cut to a funeral, and I'd be like, ha ha ha! And no one else was laughing. It was like, all right, well, okay. Well, I'm having a good time with this one. Is hitting all the right notes for me. This won't be in my top 10 again like Longlegs was last year. I didn't like it that much, but I had a really good time with it, and I enjoyed what it delivered with this bonkers, ultra-violent film that's playing around with kind of Final Destination stuff, dual roles. It worked for me. Book Coming in at number 1, Heart Eyes. And to be perfectly clear, there's no chance this is going to be one of my top 10 movies at the end of the year. I didn't think it was amazing, fantastic, but I had a really good time with it. Then I look at the movies that came out this month that I've watched. Like, none of them were fantastic, but I had a good time with several of them. And the one that I think I had the best time with, that I'd be most likely to rewatch and recommend to someone, try and talk my wife into watching, I think would be Heart Eyes. I did go back and forth between The Monkey and Heart Eyes as to which one would be number 1. And obviously for the moment, I went with Heart Eyes. Fun detail here, January, my number 1 movie, horror film. I went with Companion, with a bit of a horror thriller in there. And then this month we've got The Monkey as well as Heart Eyes at the top. It's been a good year for horror thus far. Maybe it's just been a bad year for movies thus far, but we got several movies that I have thoroughly enjoyed in here. So specifically, what did I enjoy about Heart Eyes is that it is a rom-com, essentially, that just happens to be a slasher. And one of the writers, producers on it is Christopher Landon, who I will actually be getting to interview. Very likely I will be getting to interview him during South by Southwest about his new movie, Drop. But this is the guy that did Happy Death Day, Freaky, and he's kind of carved out this space for him in the horror space where he kind of blends together some genre with a slasher. And so he did that with Time Loops, Happy Death Day. He did Freaky Friday with Friday the 13th, and you get the movie Freaky. And here you're kind of taking this kind of classic rom-com formula about this girl who works at an ad agency writing romantic cards, but she herself is heartbroken, and so there's something deeply broken in what she's doing, and this guy shows up that is kind of the guy of her dreams that seems interested in her. They seem to have chemistry. They keep connecting. Turns out maybe he's going to be the guy taking her job, and they end up kind of on a date that she's pushing away because of how disenfranchised she is with love, and he's the romantic pursuing her. Oh, by the way, they happen to be in the middle of a slasher film. And so you get ultra violence, you get the laughs that come with that, and you just kind of get this fun romance thrown in there at the same time. What fun detail in here is that the movie was, I didn't realize this until now, Mesa Gooding, probably should have realized, I don't know how I didn't pick up on this, Mesa Gooding, last name is Gooding, because his dad is Cuba Gooding Jr., I didn't know that until about 2 weeks ago. I mean, he was in the Scream movies, he's been in a bunch of other stuff, and I just never picked up on the fact, wait a minute, something about those facial features looks familiar. Wait, Gooding, is there another gentleman in this industry with the last name Gooding? What could the connection be? So I love that sort of, that was kind of fun to put that together, but as for this film, it delivered exactly what I wanted out of it. It could be a little bit corny. Is it like this life-changing movie? Is it the greatest horror film of all time? Anything? No, of course not. But is it a fun, refreshing, date night horror movie? Yes, it is. Does it get a little bit wacky with some of the reveals, the twists? Maybe a little bit, sure. But that's what I signed up for. That's what I wanted out of the movie. So I got what I wanted out of this film. So for me, in a month where I don't think it was the strongest of competition, it comes in at number 1. Remember to join me down below in the comments section. Let me know your ranking of the new movies that you saw. Also, you can check out that interview with Scott Derrickson right over there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.